David and I walked like 3 blocks and like just looking for something between the convention and ended up finding this like martini bar. And it was just like the most hilarious thing ever to see this guy like with bib overalls and a plaid shirt, like this butcher from the Northwest, like at this cocktail lounge, like at a meat convention. Like it was just super funny and ironic. So that's one of my fond memories of when I got to spend some time in person with David. I love it.
Good cutting enhances the quality of good meat. In his way, the meat cutter is an artist. Poor cutting results in an inferior piece of meat, regardless of quality.
I'll act like I've done this before.
That's all right.
Yeah, no, this is the podcast studio / laundry room / my wife's workout studio. I'm not gonna lie, I don't do any working out here. So yeah, and then this is the most uninteresting part of my house. So
I just appreciate the fact that it looks like there's maybe even like a couple freezers behind you.
Yeah, I got a freezer and a fridge, and then I'm surrounded by of course, an industrial ice maker that every house needs.
For sure.
Yeah.
I just appreciate the way that you can lift weights, grab some work product from behind the freezer, and record your podcast within 4 feet of one another. Yeah. I think that's perfect.
As well as a backdrop that I could shoot content in front of as well.
You've got it all, man.
Yeah.
That's great. Well, I appreciate you taking some time tonight. Do you have a long day at work today?
I don't think I don't have a long day, just because there's a built-in commute, which adds a little bit, but that's the listeners have heard me complain about that enough.
Sure.
But yeah, it's just work is work. And yeah, how are you doing, Alex? And Alex, also, please introduce yourself. Say your last name, because if I try to say it, I will butcher it, pun intended. So
No problem. So Travis, again, thanks for having me on. I'm Alex Freeman. I'm the CEO of Smart Locker USA. We're a company that's dedicated to helping make butchers' lives easier with online order intake and customer management. We have customers nationwide, small processors with as few as 2 employees, all the way up to some larger plants with 20 plus. So that's kind of what we're doing with the software. And then we also, in tandem, have a separate company called Agriculture Grant Solutions that works with all kinds of rural businesses, but have had a lot of success working with meat processors, specifically in the last few years, looking for credits, grants, and incentives to grow their business. So we're based out of Des Moines, Iowa, in both companies' case, but we serve everybody nationwide from everywhere from rural Washington State down to the sunny state of Florida and everywhere in between. So,
that's awesome.
I think you and I got connected originally through working with the NPAN network and some of the great people over there, Rebecca Thistlewaite and David Zarling too, co-host absentee tonight, but both of them we've met and had a lot of great experience working together and helping out the community in the ways that they do and us being supportive too.
Yeah, I haven't met Rebecca in person, but I did in the middle of the pandemic have a online ugly sweater Zoom Christmas party, and invited her to, and she did show up. So
of course she showed up. I feel like Rebecca's at everything, and I guarantee you that she for sure had the ugliest sweater too, because she's good at. I feel like Rebecca is one of those people who's good at superlatives.
Yes.
If there's like a worst, best, biggest, smallest, whatever it is, I feel like Rebecca can win a contest no matter what it is in the superlative category.
Yeah, it was an impressive sight. I wonder if I still have screen grabs at that event. It was unique. I didn't have a way to, with COVID, I was trying to create a personal connection between people, and hopefully I achieved that.
You should have pulled a Lady Gaga and just worn a bunch of raw steaks as a sweater and called that your ugly sweater.
I know. Or that reminds me of this. I did a TikTok about that specific her wearing that, and I was like, I want to make sure I got it right, and it's mostly flank steaks and bavettes that she's wearing. And
interesting.
And the dress still exists to this day, but I hopefully they cured it or something. But it's on.
It's a jerky dress now.
Yeah, it's on display. It's just funny because it was one of those things where it's like, oh, I randomly know about that because I was so bored that my recall memory is like, what's everything about this? Like, like watching a movie on IMDb and looking up every single character and what they're up to now. Yeah, that may be too obscure, but let's talk. Let's talk about how did you get into the agricultural and protein harvesting industry? And what's your background in that?
Absolutely. So I was very fortunate coming out of college to be working at the Iowa Department of Agriculture. I was a policy advisor there, worked directly with our Secretary of Agriculture here in Iowa, and also got a chance to work with other departments across the country. And that was, during the height of COVID, a lot of that work, and really just saw how the opportunities, but also challenges for meat processors during and after the pandemic were going to be enormous. And there is going to be a fundamental structural shift towards the work that you do and that meat processors in our category who are listening right now. There's been the structural shift in demand towards the products and services that they offer, and that was evident pretty early on. And so after working with the Department of Agriculture a little bit on various assistance programs and other efforts that we made in Iowa and states nationwide made as well, I said, I think we can be more helpful to the food and ag community coming out of COVID on the other side of this table, working directly with people rather than on the state or official side of things. So our first foray into working with the agriculture community at all was really with the protein harvesting, like you said, and food processing, meat processing, trying to make sure that they were able to take advantage of all the credits and grants and incentives that were being rolled out, at a record pace to help them out to accommodate for that structural shift in demand towards what they're doing. And so we really saw through that process, beginning in 2021, that there were a lot of opportunities to help people grow, but also at the same time, that growth needed to be accompanied by process growth as well. And I'm sure David talks a lot about this with your listeners about how meat processing is more than the tools in or the arrows in your quiver. It's not just about the hard skills. There's also a lot of soft skills and personnel management and company management and everything that everyone running a business knows. But that seemed like it wasn't as big of a focus with some of these growth programs. And so we wanted to say, is there a way that we can solve some of the stress that people are seeing from dealing with customers, dealing with cut sheets and things like that, and launch a new tool that was very modern, simple, but also powerful for them to fix that issue as well.
Yeah, because I have a team meeting and I try to have it once a week where I get every member of my staff to go to sit down before processing, usually to lay out the week ahead and the expectations. And at the end of it, I regrettably always open it up for comments and grievances. And my head butcher and my lead supervisor it's always like, I need these cut sheets on time. I need them to be clear. We can't stop production so I could go and call somebody. And and I just look at them and tell them like, you're absolutely right. And it's, I'm sorry. Like in the way we first connected was I'm trying to solve this solution, and we've talked about like all these people want to develop their own online portal, their own this, but that's incredibly daunting for so many small business owners and even larger and medium-sized owners as well. And you have done the heavy lifting and how.
Yeah, I even if you might regret some of the requests for comments that you've made during your team meetings, I think all of your team members are putting their thumb on the right problem in this way. So what Smart Locker does, it's very simple. We try to keep the current value that you're offering, which is these intensely customized and highly specific cut sheets. We want to be able to preserve that value that you're delivering to your customer, but facilitate that whole thing in a way easier way than trying to scribble down orders over the phone or having people walk in with their own homemade version of the cut sheet, where
Yeah.
they add a little spice or a little flair to what you offer and make things really difficult with their own interpretations. Or, if you're taking phone calls and you have maybe 1 or 2 or 3 staff members dedicated, 80% of their full-time duties just to chasing down cut sheets, Smart Locker is here to make that go away and to solve that issue and reduce the inefficiency and reduce the profit zapping nature of that work. So that way you can get back to focusing on, what actually matters, what actually makes you money. That's just such a big thing, is if people want to keep growing their business, you have to grow that process with it. And also, preserve what the customer loves about doing business with you, which is that you give them what they want. And so how can we make that solution, easier? So if you want, I can give the 30-second kind of summary of how Smart Locker works, or how you walk through an order with it.
Yeah. Say I'm, just our listeners, many of them is going to be the first time ever hearing about this, right?
Yeah.
And we got to think about, like, okay, you're a small producer out there, and if you are still having a piece of paper and someone's handwriting on it, what's about to be talked about could really affect how you do business in the future. So
absolutely. So what we're looking to do is say, let's take your existing order process and allow your customers more of the ability to go on their own and fill these things out, rather than relying on your time and energy to complete it. And so Smart Locker, the way it works is that we take your existing cut sheet, you go to our website and sign up for an account. We'll then email you a request for your existing cut sheet. And if you have 10 or however many cut sheets, various species or things like that you offer, you send those over to us. We digitize them to get you started, but you can always go back into your account later and edit those questions and things like that. But once you have that cut sheet set up, then you're able to text your customers or email them a link to fill out that cut sheet on their phone or on their computer on their own time, rather than having to call into you. After they fill those out, those orders come in and they land in your process or dashboard in your account. But one of the common problems that we've seen with other people's attempts, like you mentioned, Travis, your attempt to build an online order intake form, is that these online orders, they dump into something like an Excel sheet, or they dump into something that's totally not user friendly. So what we do is we auto-generate that online order into a very clean and easy to read butcher sheet that's immediately ready for the processing room. So your customer gets to go through on their phone when they're laying in bed and fill out their cut sheet, and then submit it to you in a way that's immediately readable and actionable on your end as well. We also will do the hard work that many other people do from this stage, where they're currently taking those orders maybe over the phone, handwritten, or they're taking them in person, and then they're scanning those into a computer and saving them to a folder with the person's name on it. And I think that's what you guys had mentioned that you were up to at one point, or similar. I know a lot of people do that. But the other thing they do is, they keep the actual sheet in a file somewhere in a cabinet, and then hope that they can hang on to it long enough, and reference in the future. Smart Locker's way is we automatically validate the identity of the person who sent that into you, and then we store it for you underneath their name in a way that's searchable and sortable and really easy to look for in the future. So if anyone ever comes back, a repeat customer or something, you can duplicate their order in 2 seconds, and also reduce some of the friction. Some of your repeat customers, they'll get a better impression of you as well as a business using Smart Locker USA by being able to tell them, oh, no problem. We keep all of your records right here, rather than ho-humming and regretting how you lost the cut sheet or had to throw it away because it stunk too bad or something like that.
Yeah, definitely. Because like those cut sheets, if you hard file them and you do, let's say 20 beef cut differently a day, and you got 20 different pieces of paper. But what if you're doing quarters? Then you got 80 different pieces of paper, right? And then all of them are handled by so many different people. And then by the end of it, you have cutters, you have wrappers, and maybe even an inspector looking at that and getting a little bit of, it's in a clean environment that is made dirty by the process. And then you put that into a file cabinet, and then a year later you have to get that brownish stained piece of paper out and they're just like, oh, just reuse that one. Then you got to run it through your copy machine, and it's gross.
Exactly. And I think you exactly summarized what so many of our customers do. And it's not, I don't want to put a label on this saying that it's a bad way of doing business, because many people, have made their business 3 or 4 generations with this sort of filing system. And what we're saying is that that's exactly, the best solution until now. And we think that rather than trying to reinvent this space and like reinvent the way that this works, we're really not trying to do that. We're just trying to build on the good success that people have had so far. And so the cut sheet itself, it's the same questions. You're cutting the same order. It's not like we're creating some giant marketplace and asking you to list your products online or anything fundamentally different. We're just saying, can we take what you currently do and make it way easier and reduce the time it takes? And no, I've yet to meet a butcher who likes filling out cut sheets. They like to talk to their customers, but our question is, why talk to your customer about how many steaks per package they want when you can be talking to them about how their family's doing or what they're going to be doing with the meat that they get or something else? Some more valuable conversation that actually makes that customer feel closer to you as a business, rather than just the rote, taking down orders every time they talk to you.
Yeah, and then it'll also help relieve a lot of the listeners, and a lot of people will relate that, well, that wasn't on my cut sheet, or, well, you should know how cut it like you did last time. You should know that I always get my short ribs. You should know I always do this. And it's like, if it's not on the cut sheet, it doesn't exist, in my opinion. It's like the cat in the box. It's fine. People, I think your system is going to relieve so much of that just unnecessary tension that sometimes happens, because there's the ambiguity could be taken away.
Exactly. And we offer people multiple ways to ask their questions on Smart Locker. So you can do multiple choice questions, check boxes, drop downs, and you can also include educational information in the cut sheet to help reduce the customer confusion as well. I've always equated a first-time user of a cut sheet or a first-time customer at a butcher shop filling out a cut sheet over the phone, kind of like trying to place a Subway order like through a walkie-talkie or something.
Yeah.
If they've never been to Subway before. It's like there are already so many options. What kind of bread do you want? What kind of meat? What kind of cheese? What else are you going to put on it? You want to toast this thing? And you're trying to ask all these questions over the phone. And this person's like trying to visualize what all of this looks like. And they've never, it gets really complicated, where with Smart Locker instead, you can put in these very simple and powerful descriptions and educational tools and links to recipes, culinary notes, stuff like that, to make that person feel good about what they're filling out on their own, and they don't have to call you to do it.
Yeah. And one thing that I like is the way that you could select something that it could also then instinctively take off something else, right? So you have your short loin, and we all know that a T-bone has your tenderloin on one side and your New York on the other. And so it's like, do you want porterhouse T-bone or New York tenderloins? But you can make it so they can't put the both option.
Exactly. Yeah, that's exactly right. Where you're really helping them, you're making them feel good about placing the order, but at the same time, you're reducing the ways that they can mess it up at the same time. And that's a great thing, for all parties, because they get what they want, they know what they get. The other cool thing is that when they submit an order through Smart Locker, unlike if you take one over the phone, as they currently do, there's just sort of okay, sounds good, thank you, and you hang up. With Smart Locker, when they submit an order, they get a carbon copy of it emailed to them right away, so they know exactly what they put down. The other thing that people ask us all the time is, there's always a handful of customers who just refuse to do anything on their phone. They can't do it, and that's all good. We built Smart Locker understanding that. So there's a button in there that just says new order on it, and you just click on it, and then when they call you, you can fill it out for them. But that way all your orders stay in one spot. You're not trapped. You're not tracing like pieces of paper from a file cabinet, and then online orders separately and stuff. Everything stays in one spot this way.
Yeah, and it also allows that person who spends all day taking orders to maybe spend 20 minutes taking orders, for that one customer that, and there's old school farmers out there, there's old school customers out there. I still have to hand write letters to let people know about certain information. And there's Zoom meetings that I have to have with people right next to me to make sure that they're in the know. One thing I really like about the note section, and I think it's really good, is because a lot of explaining a cut sheet or options to someone is an educational experience. That why is a ribeye steak, how does that eliminate my back ribs? But you could say, by doing this, you can eliminate your back ribs, and you could put all the answers you need. And instead of telling that information dozens of times a day and educating people once, you just have to do the hard work to put in the reason and the instructions and the cooking stuff just once. You just have to have that conversation once with people. Like, you want a chuck roll? Do you want a 7-bone chuck? If you get a 7-bone chuck, you can't get this and this and the reason,
You make people, I think, so much, our brains as people. I was just listening to a podcast the other day about what our brains think like and what we can justify in our heads. And so many people, they'll accept what you tell them as long as you tell them the because. I think many customers that you might be dealing with, they get frustrated with their order or with the process because they're not aware of the because. And if you can just indicate in those instructions, on Smart Locker, on the form in real time as they're filling it out, why certain things are a certain way, or what they can expect, you reduce that friction and you make people have a lot better experience dealing with you.
Yeah, and when I found about you, when I found out about you guys, I was super excited knowing the cut and wrap where I work. We have so many different growers that sell to different outlets, and this would actually even be like beneficial to them, because now the grower doesn't have to contact, like they do 20 sheep, they don't have to contact 20 people and get their cut sheets. They can have those buyers just go to this portal essentially.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're a farmer, Smart Locker can also be for you as well. If you have a large, custom business going on, you sign up for the platform the same way that a butcher would. And instead, you just use the platform to facilitate the intake of your cut sheets as well. And, you can pass this along to your processor. I think for anybody, engaged in this space, if you're making phone calls about your cut sheets, the software can make your life a lot easier. That's basically the long and short of it. But also, I wanted to talk too about, some of the stuff you were mentioning with your team meetings and some of the frustration in the processing environment. We've seen, like, during COVID, I was just reading a news article. I had it pulled up on my screen. It looked like 4.4 million people quit their jobs in May of 2022. And that was from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce website. We have, another thing that they were mentioning on the site I was reading, 3.4 million people, fewer people are working today compared to February of 2020. So these labor issues that we're seeing at the small plants, they hit really hard. And there was another stat that they had in here about in the spring of 2020, 3.5 million mothers left their jobs. So the labor force participation rate for moms went down from 70% to about half, to 50%. And you look at that and you think, if you're a meat processor looking at this environment where people are quitting their jobs en masse, it's hard to find people to work. And then we're also coming into this uncertain economic time. An investment in automation of your order process can be huge. And a lot of these larger businesses have been ahead of the game on this because they have the money to do it. They can pay software developers to sit down and develop these online order portals that work for them. Like, look at Shake Shack. Before COVID, they took 85% of their orders at Shake Shack in person at the register. And now that number is down to 43% now at the register. They cut their in-person orders almost in half. The same thing I was looking at with Papa John's and pizza. They were taking 90% of their orders by phone before the pandemic. Now they're under 30% by phone. This is a trend that's not going away. It's hitting every segment of the economy. And really what we're looking to do with Smart Locker is say, let's help small meat processors and farmers capitalize on this, but not lose that personal touch in their business either. It doesn't have to be an impersonal process. It just means that if you're taking that cut sheet without a phone call, it frees you up to talk to your customers in a much more human way when they show up to pick up their meat, because you're not freaking out about taking 20 phone calls when that person walks in to get their order.
Exactly. And just anecdotally, when COVID hit, I did all the curbside pickup and I did all the delivery and DoorDash, the Instacarts, all those things, and I still do them. And the reason is because I'm a huge introvert, and I want to avoid so much human contact. And when the other day, like a delivery guy came up, and I was in my kitchen, and I awkwardly made eye contact as they put something down. And then when they turned away for a second, I just jumped on the floor. Because
I had this DoorDash one time. The guy showed up, and you could tell that he was so scared to talk in person, at all. Like that was just not part of the job description for him. So.
So I definitely see, this trend continuing. And the good thing is about being in the meat industry and the small scale meat processing is there's always going to be a need for skilled labor. But the gift of gab of having someone in the office to tell the story 20 times a day, because that person who's filling out that cut sheet is also a wealth of knowledge that could be used somewhere else in the facility, because they know so much about what they're telling the customers anyway, that they could be focusing on quality assurance. They could be focusing on invoicing or anything.
Absolutely. I think that person is a gatekeeper, to your whole business. And there's so much institutional knowledge wrapped up in the person taking those orders that why would you want them on the phone talking to customers about, over and over again, the same thing, like you're saying, when instead, they could be in there saying, hey, if you're cutting the meat for this customer, last time they complained about this. And they know because they talked to them. And there's just so much wrapped up in that particular person where, like you said, they can contribute so much value. And that's where we have a hard time with Smart Locker with this. People ask us how much money they think they'll save if they sign up for it. And we've done the calculations, and it's based on hourly wages, that people will save about $30,000 a year in direct labor costs by implementing some sort of online order system. We think ours is the right one, but obviously, whatever you can do to reduce your labor costs associated with administrative and overhead is great for the business. So you can save a lot of money with this tool. But what's even harder is, many times it's like the owner of the business doing this, or someone who's an executive in the company. Even if it's a small company, there's an executive. There always is. It might be the wife of the owner who co-owns it with them, or anything like that. But these people are very high value to the business, and to be spending that high value executive time. Imagine if you drove up to the drive-thru at McDonald's and the CEO and the CFO were both sitting there taking your order. It wouldn't be a multi-billion-dollar company like it is. And so even if you're a small business, I think using that framework of what's helped big guys in any industry, scale up and grow, if that's your goal, I think it's worth repeating their example, and repeating what's good about their example anyways.
Yeah. And I would say that if you have that amazing person at your office, this is not to replace that person. This is to utilize those skills in a better way. But if you have that person in your office that is answering the phone and then running and getting the head butcher being like, what does this mean? What does that mean? Then you need to find a more suitable role until they know everything, and then maybe go with a more automated system. Because I see a lot of, yet like you said, head butchers, the small cut lockers like that were only doing like 3 beef a day. Now, even if they add a 4th or 5th beef to it, that's like, almost double their production, and for a day, and they're usually just like a 4-man crew.
Wow. Yeah, that's just a really powerful example, I think, of exactly where, if you're looking at, especially as we go into 2023, I mean, it's a unique time right now economically. I think a lot of people are a little bit uncertain, rightfully so. And I think people should, in this industry, really, like you said, if you have that valuable employee, that person who really knows what they're doing, you really need to cling on to that and make sure that they're satisfied in their job and doing what's the highest value contribution to the business.
Yeah, and I think that's the big scare and pushback, especially for people in our industry, is that they view is the understanding, because people are scared of what they don't understand, and the idea of implementing something that's going to save time and devices ultimately to make everyone's job in that industry better, especially everyone at that places or that plants, better. But walk me through one thing I really enjoyed. Sorry, my brain shifted. I saw a squirrel. So one thing that I thought was amazing when we're talking is how easy the back end work was. If you have a company email, then you could use it. If you could fill out if you could order a Subway sandwich online, then you could use it, right? But say if your cut and wrap runs out of Chipotle sausage seasoning, instead of calling up everyone who's going to bring stuff for the next month because there's a shipping chain issue or whiting out, or even going in your typing out your cut sheet to say we don't have this, you could just go into the back end and just click that it's unavailable, and no one would even know it was an option.
Exactly. Yeah, the real-time editing of the cut sheet on the back end is super easy. Like you said, it's no different than navigating so many other systems that large companies have built for us, in every way. If you go on Amazon and product is out, it's easy for Amazon. That is all updating. So for some reason, with local meat processing, no one really cared enough to build a user-friendly, modern, very simple way to do the same things that we expect in every other corner of our life. And we're really excited about the chance to be able to give people that solution to do that. Because like you said, like, what a train wreck that just leads to more train wrecks. If you have just such a simple thing like, oh, we need to quick remove Chipotle seasoning from one aspect of our cut sheet. You go in, you click edit cut sheet, and you click delete Chipotle seasoning, and you're done.
Yeah,
and you just save yourself.
Yeah, you don't have to call like the 20 people who all of a sudden wanted it.
Exactly. And if anyone's submitted already with that ingredient on there, it's really easy to go in, make and edit the cut sheet yourself. So no more whiteout or scratching out stuff or crisscrossing through. You just click on edit submission. You can change their order, and then you can make a note of that in the comment box on the cut sheet to let them know, we ran out of this, so we replaced it with something else. Just like Instacart, or if anyone's ever had groceries delivered or something like that, substitutions are a common thing that happens. And it's just important that you have a clean and easy way to let the customer know, again, because why. And they'll usually accept that. I hope. I know some people probably love the Chipotle seasoning, but
yeah. Well, you can't make the phrase, you can't make everyone happy. It's but so what are the species we have? You guys do pork, beef, goat, and lamb, or what about the game aspect, or the for the game processors out there? Because
go ahead, sorry.
I was going to say, because that's got to be crazy if you were to do like turkeys or poultry, rabbits, bear, all that stuff. Is that something you guys offer as well?
Yeah, we offer every wild game species in North America in the settings of the cut sheet. And so you can accept any type of animal. We had some requests for animals I didn't know existed from people down in New Mexico, especially. They've got some pretty crazy stuff down there. So if you're a listener in New Mexico and you join Smart Locker, we've got everything taken care of for Southwest, Northwest wild game, the Rocky Mountain region. We've got all the species loaded in. So you can also do stuff like track your hunters and track their license numbers, their hunting and license ID numbers really easily in the system too. So that way, when they fill out a cut sheet, they can actually fill out a cut sheet before they even show up with their game. And so when they show up, they have that cut sheet already submitted to you. It's got their tag number, or their hunter's ID number, or license number already plugged into the cut sheet, along with all of their selections. And then you can go in and make notes about the carcass condition or anything like that. If you disagree with what they put down for the carcass condition, you might on the cut sheet, if you have a bear cut sheet, for example, or something like that, any wild game, you can put down a question, what is the condition? Are there these complications with it? Or that way you know what to expect when it comes in. And if you find an error, something with how they brought it in, you can document that in the cut sheet and save that for the record as well.
Yeah. And hearing about the tag numbers and all that could also work with lot numbers, carcass IDs for all species as well to help with traceability. It having the digital version. So I have like 6 foot tall file cabinets that I could eliminate with this, because you save records for I can never get a straight answer on it. I've had people in the USDA tell me you could save records for 6 years, you could save records for 2 years, you could save them for 6 months. So I just save them all. But if you,
sure,
yeah. But if you had a traceability, even if it's in digital form, you could feel good about your record keeping and security at that point. Just put it on a hard drive, put it in your desk.
Exactly. And we have the ability to store stuff for as long as people want. In the system, it's all cloud-based, stores automatically, and is secure. So when someone submits a cut sheet to you, that thing's not going away. And it's also not subject to any of the stuff that we talked about related to, if there's a flood in the facility, if a pipe breaks right over the top of your file cabinet and you left the drawer open, and then you have a USDA inspector down your neck the next day, that sounds like a nightmare to me. And so all of our cloud-based storage is just, letting us sleep a little easier at night in so many different ways. We're really excited about it. We're also continuously improving that food and traceability piece of things, not only for the inspection and compliance purposes of good record keeping, which is just the expectation, but we're excited about the value that soon I think these sorts of records, if kept continuously enough and well enough, could actually lead to more profit for a meat processor or a farmer, where the more that they can document, consumers are willing to pay for that, it seems, these days. And we'll see if that holds up during the recession and things like that are probably coming. But if people are willing to pay for a little bit more knowledge about the slaughter date of the animal specifically, or things like that, it's like having that information is the first step to capitalizing on that value. We look forward to that being something we advance on in the future with Smart Locker too.
Yeah, and anything in the future, as far as like number one thing I hear is hot weight, chilled weight, and final yield. People always, and that information is super important. It's not hard to get, but it's time consuming to get. For a lot of small processors, they either have to go into their scales and figure it out, or they have to, and then if that could be saved and extracted easy, a lot of producers would love that. As well as, why did this animal weigh this much and it was slaughtered this time of year? What, even if they put the species, the sex, the how much how old they were on the cut sheet, that could all be useful as well.
Absolutely. And we look forward to continuing to build out the way that people are able to track the information and give them some analytics. Do beef that come in from this region, this zip code, weigh more or less? And does that vary by the season? That's all stuff that we're looking at. Once we have a critical mass of data, being able to help a processor understand better as well. I think that'd be a great future use case for some of the data that's going to come out of this.
So if I sign up with you guys and I'm a brand new processor and I'm not computer savvy, or I need to focus my business, what's it like? I sure you guys just don't set it up and just wipe your hands and say, all right, bye. So
exactly.
So what does the relationship look like after that, in when we're now we're invested in using your tool.
Absolutely. So the first step that you do is go to smartlockerusa.com, click on sign up, make your account. You'll send us over your cut sheets like we talked about. Our team does the hardest part, which is kind of getting that cut sheet in a digital form. We do that all for you to get set up. And then we'll do a training call with you and also with any of your teammates or staff if you want as well, to make sure that people, even though the software is really simple, you can learn it over a lunch break. Really, it's as simple as that. If you can learn, in 45 minutes with very low tech skills, that this is for sure a feasible thing for you. It's about 45 minutes to watch me or one of our team members poke through a demo of your specific cut sheet, show you how it all works, and then you're good to go. Our team will train you up like that, but then also, if you have questions or things, we're responsive, through the feedback features, supporting that way through the account too. So we're here for the continuous aspect of it too, making sure that you're successful and get set up the right way and all that good stuff. The other thing too I would add is that, as you have employees, we've seen this a lot. Some employees who have a little downtime in the afternoon, 4 o'clock rolls around, they're about to head out, they have 30 minutes, and they don't know what's productive to do. They can use that time now to, click through Smart Locker and add some customers in there or update customer files. And it's not such a big task anymore. It's way easier. It's a great filler task that adds value to the business during downtime as well. And so having the system around, it's like that, it's a gift that keeps on giving that way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's important because you want to have accurate profiles of your customers. So if they say maybe they didn't harvest anything, right? And they just give you a throwaway line when they pick up, oh, next time I would like to do this, but you could just put it in their profile, and because they may forget next time, or you may forget, and then you can bring it up.
Exactly. Or another thing that we've gotten from people, I wanted to go through. Oh, there's one more big value add that I had about customizing the different cut sheets for not only the wild game like we talked about, but also if you're doing a lot of domestic livestock. We're allowing people to treat each size of each animal like its own cut sheet. And that, again, just goes back to what we were talking about before with reducing that consumer confusion and also reducing the risk of error filling out the cut sheet. So if someone, say, is doing a whole beef, you can give them a big list of questions that are associated with the whole beef. We break it down into steps for them too, so it's easier rather than just looking at the giant page all at once to go through each little step one at a time. But then if someone, say, is clicking on a quarter beef, it will automatically populate with the appropriate questions for a quarter. And that is, again, just one of those phone calls. Well, why don't I get to choose this option? Because they see it on the cut sheet, but they can't choose it traditionally. And that, again, just reducing that friction.
Yeah. And that's huge because for the consumer out there or the cutter, that if you're a grower and you're selling a quarter beef, you want to make sure that the other person buying a quarter or the other 3/4 are cut preferably the exact same, and then the packager will divide it in quarters at that point. But if one person gets this thing, maybe, like, for example, there's only 2 flanks, 2 tri-tips on an animal, so you got to make sure that it gets split up and distributed evenly, or one person gets the flank, one person gets the tri-tip, and a lot of that's just kind of guesstimated in the packaging profile or in the packaging portion. Right.
And I was going to ask you, when you go through your business, you deal with people, who are filling out these sheets on smaller orders like that. What are some of the strategies that you use, like, to be successful with that? Because it's really hard, and it's not obvious how you handle it.
So it's I'll one of the best ways is to sell a standard quarter, right? So because I do have a retail side and a distribution side of my business that isn't that goes straight to the public and other service. So we have a quarter standard, right? So that if you buy a quarter, if you call me up and say you want a quarter of beef, then you are going to get a quarter of beef, but cut in this one way. We just call it like American traditional cut sheet. And if you want to go beyond that and get fresher stuff, then there's going to be a waiting period, because then I have to get an animal and get a farmer to sell me an animal. And then I got to find a source for the other parts of it. Because say someone wants something like 7-bone chucks, well, our standard quarter will only have boneless chuck roll. And then I have a back end of that, and then there's a retail side of my industry that if I'm low on quarters at that point, my stuff is priced so I could break a quarter and then put that and disperse it out in retail, knowing that the people will still save money if they buy a quarter. So you just have to make sure you price it appropriately. But that's how I do it. And I don't know if that was complicated or not, but I don't know.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I don't think there's any right way to do it, but it's just interesting, I think, to hear from people who are having success. It's so much of the value that you're adding with your podcast and all of your work that you do, even on TikTok and stuff. It's just really cool what you're doing. I'm really grateful that you're out here, talking to people about, the ways that they're successful, some of the ways that their day sucks, and the way that, things are not successful at all, which is equally valuable to learn from.
So a lot of people don't know is about a month ago, I suffered from a horrible accident that tore my rotator cuff, and I still recovering from a traumatic brain injury from. So like one of the things I've worked my entire life on is meat cutting. Now that I can't hold a knife or lift more than a pound, I was feeling down in the dumps, and talking about there's so much value that could be in this industry. I'm forcing myself to do those things that I haven't done in many years because I've relied on other people to do them. Building the connection with the farms, going over my, creating better GMPs, auditing every single thing at my plant. So that person who's doing your cut sheets can now focus on all that stuff. So, yeah.
Wow. I mean, what your life experience and, accidents and everything that have coincided together have forced you to do, I think is such a blessing in that way, where, now you're being forced to do things that you probably never would have done on your own. And like, look at what you're achieving with it already. It's so cool. And I'm just really grateful to be a part of it.
Oh, thanks. Yeah. I was like, oh, this is going to be so boring. And then, like being on light duty, and I'm not going to lie, a lot of times it is, but I get excited when I have to do a regulatory corrective action, because I'm like, oh, sweet, I'm justifying being here because I found something. But yeah, I want to talk about if you wanted to, about the other part of the business that you do, or the other business you do, and how that could help small producers and small farmers as well. Because it seems like the USDA, the government, there's just so many of these grants available, and so much more that's coming down the pipeline as well.
Absolutely. We hear this all the time, is that people will submit a lead on our website, which is a great way, a first step to get in touch with us. So you go to agriculturegrantsolutions.com and submit a contact form and just tell us a little bit about yourself and what your ambitions are. But so many people go on there and say that they feel like they're missing out on grants and incentives. Sometimes they're right, and sometimes they're not. But I think it's still helpful to have a second set of eyes looking out for you in this way, and making sure that, if you have, a small business that's starting up, maybe you're a plant that is not yet open, or maybe you've been around for 30 years or something or longer, and you're looking to grow. There are a number of programs out there, and we've had success, and we've done over $200 million in project proposals and grants for meat processors and food and ag businesses across the country in 40 different states. And so what our specialty is being able to sit down with people and identify opportunities, and then take advantage of them in a way that makes sense for their business. So there might be smaller grants that require a lot of attention to detail about if you qualify, or it might be something obvious like USDA blasts a news release out and it's pretty obvious that you qualify for it. Our team has a really clean and easy process to walk through. No matter what the program is, we're happy to help. go for that full process of, hey, let's get your account set up the right way, make sure you're registered, write the application professionally, develop the budget, consult on the project scope as needed, how it fits into the grant, and then get it submitted the right way. Then on the back end, we have a suite of resources online that we allow people access to as they go about navigating their successful award and that administration process as well.
Mm-hmm. And so if I'm and this would benefit USDA, custom exempt game. What is the gamut? Raw, smoked, cured?
We've seen programs that basically everyone you just mentioned could potentially qualify for. There have been programs like the Inspection Readiness Grant from USDA that's specifically for people who are not in a USDA status yet, might be custom or state inspected, looking to move up to the Cooperative Interstate Shipping Program or to the USDA status. The CIS program is something that exists in a handful of states, but not everywhere for people. So really, if you're looking at what types of workforce development credits or potential training programs are out there for my employees, if you want to send people to something like the Ultrasource Academy or Iowa State University, they have a bunch of short courses that people fly in for, stuff like that. There are all kinds of resources to make your team better and more productive. There might be a good chance that in your state, even at the state level, the Economic Development Authority will help you pay for some of that or something like that. Our team, we offer a few different services that way to go out and explore for you and report back what you might be eligible for that way too. So dropping us a line is a great start to starting that relationship.
Yeah, and I think now to just bundle it, right? So we have Smart Locker, and we now have that person who's not on the phone, but now we call, we want to invest in this person. We learn about these resources to invest in your own employees, which is something all businesses need to actively think about. And yeah, then you could send them you get a grant to invest into your employees and improve your workforce. Now that person answering the phone could make added value product.
Yeah, exactly. Or that they're doing all kinds of engagement, like you said, producer engagement. They're out there recruiting new business for you. If that person's good on the phone and customer friendly, think about the potential that's there in that person. And to your point too, I mean, we talked about earlier, 4.4 million people in May of 2022 quitting their job. That sort of thing doesn't happen unless people feel really unhappy with their job as well. And so, obviously there's some aspect of this. The government in a massive way has subsidized not working for, the last several years. And the benefits of that were that people, were safer during a pandemic. The downside is that it was very hard to get people to return to jobs. We're still facing that with the reduced labor force participation rate and things like that. But if you want to do everything you reasonably can to keep those people where they're at and operating your business, like you said, investing in them in some way, giving them new skills, making them feel like they're valued, is not a bad idea. And it's even a better idea if you can get someone else to pay for it.
Exactly.
Like the State Economic Development Authority or someone like that.
Yeah, because you want to, like, there was this is not anecdote, this is like true. I was like 2 years into slaughter, doing a little bit of meat cutting, and my company that I was working for at the time, like, invested in me to get my HACCP certification, right? And I'm in my early 20s, and then I'm like, something clicked, and then they invested in me to get humane handling certified. And think about whatever you want about those certificates and what they mean, but when I was in my early 20s and I take that recognition that they're investing in me, this no longer became a job. It started shifting into a career because they were invested. I was invested.
Absolutely. The micro credential is something that is real. I've read a lot about that being a trend that younger people, like you said, in your 20s, younger people really care about micro credentials. It means it's not a degree. It's not a bachelor's of anything. It's, a 3-week course or a 5-day course. It costs a few $100 maybe or more, but something in that range that just lets employees know that the business values their contribution and wants to reinvest some of those dividends from their good work back into making that employee even better at their job. I think that's really just a great note. And I'm sure David on the podcast has talked a lot about the importance of doing that. I know at the MPAN Meat Processor Academy that they have probably, I'm really looking forward to the slate of courses and things that they talk about there. And I'm sure that'll come up over and over again. Reinvesting the dividends back, and just a small portion of them, $300 for a micro credential or $1,000 to go to HACCP training. Like you said, that converts an employee willing to quit after one bad day into a career-oriented person who's willing to stick out some of the inevitable ups and downs that come along with this because they're invested in it way beyond just their hourly wage.
Yeah. And I did a little bit ago, I did a forklift certification training with key members of my staff. And it was just like, we all know how to drive a forklift, but like I don't mean that like literally, but the people who are taking it, like, well, why do I need this? And it's like, because I one, OSHA, two, I want to invest in you, and I want you to become a trainer, so now you could train other people in the future here. And it's just,
and think about the value think about what you're doing when you do that as a business owner. If you're in this position, if you are a business owner saying to your employee, I trust you to go out and help this business continue, and bring in a new cohort or a new employee. I mean, that trust is so valuable in making people feel invested in your business too. I think that's just a great takeaway, and good management on your part too, to help your employees feel like they're contributing to the mission rather than just building someone else's dream.
Yeah, I could talk for hours about managerial tactics, but unfortunately, I do know some of my employees listen to the show. So it would get really inside baseball, and I'd have to be like, watch every single sentence I say.
It's funny. That we've heard a lot of stories about people who, in the last few years, the stress of everything. I mean, the last few years is insane. It's just insane. There's no other way to put it. I'll have clients call me. We're talking about their grant application, and they just want to take their bad day out on us. And we understand that because this whole thing has been just bonkers for people. Going from cutting 5 to 15 beef a week, hiring 5 people, and they've had a staff of 5 for 10 years, and they hire 5 people in a year. I mean, just the stories that we've heard, landing accounts that are 300%, of what they were producing before of a specific product, and ramping up production in that area. I mean, the stuff that people have been asked to do in the last few years, it's so stressful. And anything you can do to bring the temperature down in your organization a little bit, building some goodwill with training, bringing in some modern equipment that maybe you purchased through some grant or incentive to take the stress out of an old process that worked at your small scale but doesn't work now. Or with Smart Locker, hey, we're going to not have the phone ring consistently every 3 seconds in the locker, and freeing up some labor hours to go spend on more enjoyable stuff or other things. So many different ways that you can proactively, just little by little, make those changes that go a long way.
Yeah, because so with scalability, right? We're talking about businesses that now are needing to put band-aids on their growth because they don't have the tools to grow at the appropriate rate. So there's that cusp where they're not hiring the right amount of people. So almost everyone's overworked before they get their what they feel is the economic, or like, we need 4 beef a day before we can hire another person. We're at 3.5. And so you're working that everyone is afraid to get sick. You don't show up. You don't call in sick, you call in dead. Unless the bone's sticking out, you're fine. That old school mentality. Then you're like, on top of that, this person who wants to scale, who realizes that putting what is that JB Weld on broken pieces of a bandsaw. No, they need a new bandsaw, but they can't even write a grant. And then they think grant writing's gatekeeping, and they're just a dumb butcher or a meat cutter. They don't know what to do. And then they call you guys.
Yeah, I think we're here to do our small part. You know, we don't cut meat very well. I can do it, but I'm not very good at it. But we're really great at writing grants, and we have a really good software that was designed by butchers. You know, and I think there's so much room for growth in every segment of our society around this whole concept of that's very biblical of humility. You know, and knowing what
Mhm.
you know and appreciating when someone else can step in and provide some grace and a little bit of skill or manpower in a way that is not your forte. And we're happy to do that where we know, and we also rely on our community of clients and people who reach out to us to teach us stuff too. We just try to approach this whole thing with just saying, let's take the temperature down a little bit the best we can and just help people be successful. We're out there trying to do a good thing, and I think it just having that mindset's really paid off for us.
Yeah. And I think people like it's the phrase like there is more work, but more money, more problems, because then they don't know how to keep updated. They don't know how to adapt with the new need, and they're stuck in the paper cut sheets. They're stuck in the phone calls. They know the grants out there, and all they know is other people are getting them.
Mm-hmm.
And knowing that you can offer solutions on both sides of that, I think for if it's just one person listening, it is great. So
Yeah, and I just echo all of that, and would just say that for people interested in Smart Locker, to go to our website smartlockerusa.com. We offer a free demo. We'll sit down for a conversation like this one, and we can hear your specific problems, qualms and issues that you have right now. We can walk through how the software might be able to be used to solve the specific things that you do. It's highly customizable. There are a lot of things that you can do in the platform to change the cut sheet around and how you even choose to deploy it yourself. And then with the grant writing stuff, if you'd like us to spend a few hours looking into grants and research for you, that's one way that we can get started. We also offer a free opportunities list where we blast out notifications to people when there are major announcements about programs, just that way they can see firsthand, our interpretation of what the grant's about and who's the most competitive and things like that.
awesome.